Arnold Schwarzenegger defeats the myth Sergio Oliva to become the new king of bodybuilding. All the details of the 1970 Mr. Olympia contest coming up next on Bodybuilding History.
I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings,
There's always a pecking order. The little peckers never mess with the big pecker. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
Welcome to another episode of Bodybuilding History. I'm your host, John Hansen, for the podcast Bodybuilding Legends Podcast and our website, bodybuildinglegendshow.com. On this episode of Bodybuilding History, we're going to be talking about the 1970 Mr. Olympia contest, a very iconic contest in bodybuilding history, because this was the competition where Arnold Schwarzenegger defeated Sergio Oliva to become the new king of bodybuilding. This was the 6th annual Mr. Olympia contest, and it took place on October 3rd, 1970, at the Town Hall in New York City. The contest was again promoted by Bud Parker. Bud had been promoting the Mr. Olympia contest since it began in 1965. But this was the first time that the contest was held at the Town Hall. Previously, the Mr. Olympia contest, along with all the other IFBB competitions like the Mr. World, the Mr. America, and sometimes the Mr. Universe, were always held at the Brooklyn Academy of Music in Brooklyn. After 1969, however, the owners of the Brooklyn Academy of Music told Bud Parker they would no longer allow him to hold his competitions there because the bodybuilders were getting oil all over the curtains at the theater. As a result, Bud Parker had to find a new place to hold the Mr. Olympia this year, and he held it at the Town Hall in New York City. However, he could not hold the prejudging there, so the prejudging of the competition had to take place at Mid-City Gym, which was owned by Tom Minicello. In addition to the Mr. Olympia contest, this event also featured the IFBB Mr. America and the IFBB Mr. World. The IFBB Mr. Universe contest took place about a month earlier on September 5th, 1970, and that was held in Belgrade, Yugoslavia, which was won by Franco Colombo. So before we talk about the Mr. Olympia contest, let's talk about the IFBB Mr. America contest, which was held that night. There was some controversy right before the prejudging of the Mr. America when Sergio Oliva, who was the reigning Mr. Olympia, he had won the contest for the last 3 years, he showed up at the contest with his manager, and they demanded that the promoters let him also enter the Mr. America contest. The promoter thought Sergio was kidding at first because Sergio was already a Mr. Olympia winner. Why would he want to go all the way down to the Mr. America level? Sergio's manager explained that Sergio had just become a United States citizen, and he wanted to impress his mother by showing her that he won the Mr. America contest. Of course, all the competitors in the Mr. America contest were absolutely freaking out that Sergio was going to compete against them because they knew they had no chance of beating the myth. Fortunately, they came to a compromise, and they told Sergio that they would award him an honorary Mr. America trophy, and that way he would still be given the title of Mr. America, and then they would hold the IFBB Mr. America for all the other competitors separately. So the Mr. America contest took place in 3 height divisions, a short class, a medium class, and a tall class. In the short class, the very ripped physique of Chuck Colris took first place. Chuck was a former AAU Mr. Los Angeles and Mr. California winner, and he was always known for having extreme definition and great abs. Chuck had also taken 5th place in the most muscular division at the AAU Mr. America that same year. 2nd place went to Leon Brown from New York. Leon would become very well known over the next few years, and he was even featured quite prominently in the book Pumping Iron. In 1970, Leon was the current IFBB Mr. Western America, and he also won the Mr. California as well. And then 3rd place went to Eddie Giuliani, who was also from New York. Eddie would go on to move to California in the next couple of years, and he would become a big mainstay at Gold's Gym, and then later on World's Gym. He was a good friend of Joe Gold. Eddie won the IFBB Junior Mr. America contest in 1968, and at this point he had already been competing for 20 years. In the medium class of the Mr. America, Pete Caputo took first place. Pete took 2nd in this class a year ago, and he won the IFBB Mr. Eastern America in 1968. 2nd place in the medium class went to Charles Fouts. Charles was featured on a cover of Muscle Builder magazine, He had taken third place in the medium class a year ago, and he also won his class at the Mr. International contest. And then Gordon Babb took third place in the medium class. The tall class was won by Big Mike Katz from Connecticut. Mike was in second place a year ago in this contest, so he had moved up and he had some really good size and proportions to really dominate this class. Mike also won the IFBB Mr. East Coast contest in 1970 as well. Don Peters from California took second place in the tall class. Don actually won this class a year ago with Mike taking second, but now they reversed. Mike moved up to first and Don dropped down to second. And then third place went to David Shepard. David was also the winner of the IFBB Junior Mr. America that year. They also had body part categories at the Mr. America that year. Mike Katz won the Best Chest Award, as he always does, and he also won the Most Muscular Trophy. Pete Caputo won Best Arms. Gordon Babb won Best Back. Gordon usually always won the Best Back trophy. Don Peters won Best Legs, and Chuck Colris, who was always ripped, won the Best Abs Award. And then for the overall title, massive Mike Katz wins his first big title, the IFBB Mr. America title in 1970. All right, moving on to the IFBB Mr. World contest. This was a very competitive international contest that featured some really good bodybuilders from other countries, as well as America. The Mr. World was also held in 3 height classes: the short class, medium class, and tall class. The short class went to Franco Colombo from Italy. Franco had been living in the United States for about a year now, and he was really starting to become a great bodybuilder, and he was dominating a lot of the competitions in the IFBB. As I mentioned, he won the IFBB Mr. Universe that year about a month ago. He also won the Mr. Europe that year. And then 2 weeks before this contest, Franco had competed in the NABBA Mr. Universe in London, where he took second place to Chris Dickerson in the short class. And then the very next day, he was one of the competitors that flew to Columbus, Ohio, and competed in the AAU Mr. World contest, where Franco won the short class in the pro division and then lost the overall to Arnold. Second place in the short class of the IFBB Mr. World was Johnny Maldonado from New York. Johnny had taken second place at the IFBB Mr. Universe a year ago, and he was also the overall winner at the 1969 WBBG Pro Mr. America contest. And then Elliot Gilchrist from Grenada was in third place in this class. The medium class at the Mr. World was won by Rick Wayne. Rick won the overall at the Mr. World back in 1967, and he was the current WBBG Pro Mr. America winner. Rick looked great in this contest, and he was in the best shape of his life. Second place to Rick in the medium class was Roy Callender, originally from Barbados, but now living in London. Roy took second place in his class at the 1969 NABBA Mr. Universe. And Roy was also in second place to Chuck Sipes at the 1968 IFBB Mr. World. And then third place in this class went to the excellent physique of Steve Barnett. The tall class at the Mr. World was won by the very popular Dave Draper. Dave was a former IFBB Mr. America and Mr. Universe winner. And Dave had also competed in the NABBA Mr. Universe 2 weeks earlier in London, where he took third place in the pro division in the tall class behind Arnold Schwarzenegger and Reg Park. And then Dave traveled also to Columbus, Ohio, and competed in the professional AAU Mr. World, where he again took third place, this time behind Arnold and Sergio Oliva. Second place to Dave in the tall class was Vic Downs from Canada, and Franklin Green, who also resided in New York, was in third place. In the body part awards, Rick Wayne won Best Arms, Best Back, and Best Abs, and Franco won the Best Legs and the Most Muscular Award. And then Dave Draper won the Best Chest trophy. It looked like from the judging that it was going to be between Franco and Rick Wayne for the overall title, but surprisingly, Dave Draper was the winner of the IFBB Mr. World for 1970. Dave had won pretty much all the major titles in the IFBB, including the Mr. America in 1965 and the Mr. Universe in 1966, and now he was Mr. World in 1970. All right, let's get to the event that everybody was waiting for, and this was the rematch between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sergio Oliva at the 1970 Mr. Olympia. 1 year earlier at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, Arnold had entered his first Mr. Olympia contest, and he took second behind Sergio, who that year won his third Mr. Olympia. Now they were back for a rematch But it should be mentioned that 2 weeks earlier at the AAU Mr. World, Arnold had defeated Sergio, surprisingly. Sergio had not expected Arnold to be there because he had competed in the NABA Mr. Universe only the day before in London. But thanks to the efforts of promoter Jim Lorimer from Columbus, Ohio, who promoted the Mr. World contest, Jim flew out Arnold along with Boyer Coe, Dave Draper, and Franco Colombo, and they all entered the Mr. World contest. And Arnold was the surprise winner over Sergio, who was very, very disappointed that he lost. So now they were back 2 weeks after the Mr. World contest for a rematch at the Mr. Olympia contest, and this was the big one. This is the one that counted. Also featured in the contest was Reg Lewis. Reg had won the IFBB Mr. America way back in 1963. He had not competed in the last 7 years, and he decided to come back to this contest to take on Sergio and Arnold at the Mr. Olympia. Reg was in good shape, but he, of course, was no match for the giants, Arnold and Sergio. When Arnold came out to pose, he was much improved from a year ago. He looked even bigger than 1969, but he was also very cut. Plus, coming off his victory just 2 weeks earlier at the Mr. World and then also the Mr. Universe, Arnold was full of confidence. He had been featured really heavily in Joe Weider's Muscle Builder magazine and Mr. America magazine over the last year. So all the fans were very excited to see the new Arnold Schwarzenegger compete in the Mr. Olympia. Sergio came out last to pose, and he was even bigger than he was at the Mr. World. Unfortunately, the extra weight that Sergio gained in the last 2 weeks since the Mr. World contest in Columbus, Ohio, really blurred his definition. And Sergio also applied a very heavy coat of oil, which tended to obscure his muscle definition even more. But Sergio was bigger than ever, and he still looked incredible with his unbelievable proportions. And of course, he was very, very popular with the New York audience. Remember, Sergio was the 3-time champion. He was coming back to win it again, and he had plenty of fans in New York. They decided to do a pose down at this Mr. Olympia. The pose down was something that was relatively new in bodybuilding at the time. So Sergio and Arnold were on stage posing, and they just winged it. They were just impromptu posing in front of the audience. And of course, the audience ate it up. They loved it. And they were out there for several minutes posing. This was the contest where Arnold pulled a little trick on Sergio. When Arnold was doing a back pose, when nobody could see his face, he turned around to Sergio and told him he was tired. And he said, "Let's get out of here." So Sergio said, "Okay." So Sergio walked off the stage first, and then the audience started to boo. Arnold stopped and then looked at the audience and said, "I don't know what he's doing." And he told Sergio to come back on stage. It made Sergio look like a quitter. Now, I don't know if Arnold planned this out ahead of time or it just worked out this way, but it really made Sergio look bad. I believe the overall result was very close. Arnold was taller. He was very finished. He had good definition, but Sergio was bigger than Arnold, and he had those incredible proportions, especially his big legs. But in the end, Arnold Schwarzenegger was declared the new Mr. Olympia. At 23 years old, Arnold was the youngest Mr. Olympia in history, and that record stands to this day. There's never been anyone younger than Arnold to win the Mr. Olympia contest. So in his second try at the title, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the new king of bodybuilding. He had defeated the Myth. And in that year, in 1970, Arnold had won what he called the Triple Crown. He won 3 competitions from 3 different organizations: the AAU Mr. World, the NABA Mr. Universe, and the IFBB Mr. Olympia. From this point forward, Arnold would only continue to enter the Mr. Olympia. He would not enter any other organizations. And him and Sergio would meet one more time for another classic showdown that would take place 2 years later. But that's another story. So I hope you enjoyed this report of the 1970 Mr. Olympia contest, a very iconic competition in which Arnold Schwarzenegger became the king of bodybuilding. And Arnold would, of course, go on to win this title 6 consecutive times and then come back 5 years after he retired to win a 7th title. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel for more future episodes of Bodybuilding History. Check out the Bodybuilding Legends podcast on your favorite streaming service every week, and check out bodybuildinglegendshow.com for all our previous episodes of the Bodybuilding Legends podcast. I'm your host, John Hansen, and we'll see you next time.